In the world of gardening, as in life, it's nice to find things you can really depend on. In the plant world, well, it's hard to beat the peony. They are reliable, they're beautiful, and depending on where you live, they're easy to grow. Peonies like it cool. This is a very cool morning out here, and I'm about to cut a few to use in an arrangement. The array of peony blossoms that one can choose from is absolutely staggering. You see, throughout the last century and a half, plant breeders have developed some spectacular forms in the way of color, bloom shape, and bloom times to give gardeners even more selection. Today you can enjoy up to 6 weeks of continuous bloom by planting early, mid, and late season varieties of peonies. This is the perfect moment to talk about the stages of peony blooms. Take a look at this plant called Coral Charm. Now you can see the older blooms are pale and beginning to lose their petals. But as you move around, you can see this really bright coral one that's just about to open. That one's perfect for picking if you want to bring one inside and have it bloom indoors. If you look over here to my left, you can see one where the petals have completely fallen off, and that is the seed pod. Ideally, you just want to clip that seed pod off. The idea here is you want to preserve all of this green foliage as long as you can to rebuild the peony. Even though we're focused on the beauty of these blooms, it's really this foliage that's the most important part for them coming back year after year. Now that brings me to how you cut a peony. Now let me show you here. As you can see, this peony is about the size of a marshmallow. It's slightly soft, and this, I think, is an ideal time to cut them. In the old days, they used to dry ship peonies. They would cut them at this stage, wrap them in boxes with no water, and ship them off to market. Then at the end user would cut the stems off, put them in water, and the peonies would bloom. Now what I like to do when I'm trying to establish a big clump is go easy on the cutting. So I don't really cut flowers from them for several years. And when I do, I only cut stems where I get about 1/3 of the leaves. I want to leave 2/3 of the leaves intact. So you can see I only have 3 sets of leaves here. That's okay. The rest of those leaves are left on the plant. Again, I go back to it's the leaves that are the workhorse of the plant. They're going to restore that tuber, and they're going to make sure I have more blooms next year. May through June is typically peony season. Of course, that depends on where you live and what varieties you've planted. That's when I took a trip up to see my friend Greg Jones at Gilbert H. Wild & Son Nursery in Missouri. They've been growing perennials and peonies there for a long, long time. Greg, the aroma of these peonies was just outstanding.
It's almost overwhelming.
I'm saying, I mean, they're just gorgeous. Why do you think there's such a lure around this gorgeous flower? And for so long, it's almost timeless.
Yeah, these plants have been in cultivation for centuries, actually.
Yeah.
And they are considered the mother of all perennials. They have a long bloom season, diverse colors, and easy to grow.
Well, and outstanding beauty, my goodness. You know, I've heard of these persisting in gardens and cemeteries for 75 years and beyond.
Yes, some of these varieties, even here on the truck bed, are as long as 150 years old.
Yeah, just incredible. So if someone is buying peonies, walk us through what is like the ideal tuber, because they grow from a tuber, and you've been raising peonies your entire life.
With peonies, you want to make sure you have a real heavy eye count. 3 to 5 eyes is recommended. Then you also want to have a ratio of roots to eyes. If you have a 1-eye peony with a small 2-inch root, you're not going to get a lot of bloom. It's going to take you 3 to 4 years before you start getting bloom.
And the eyes are what emerge and create the stem. They're typically red colored.
Red and white. And basically, if you can hang a ring on it, we consider it an eye.
I see.
This is a traditional peony clump. As you can see, this one has 7 major eyes that have started to elongate and a couple dormant eyes that are still popping.
I don't know anybody that doesn't love peonies, but a lot of folks talk about how they can't get theirs to bloom. Any thoughts about that from your perspective as a grower?
There's a couple major reasons why peonies won't bloom. Number one is if you plant the eyes too deep, then the plant cannot break through in the spring and grow flowers.
What's a gauge that someone should follow there, Greg?
Here in the center part of the United States, we recommend an inch, the eyes be 1 inch beneath the top of the soil. In the further north where you have really good cold temperatures, you can go as deep as 2. If you go south into Arkansas, into those areas, we recommend a 1/2 inch because we want them to be cold. The other thing that happens quite often is that if you're in an environment where it doesn't get 4 to 6 weeks of freezing weather, it won't set a flower bud. So you get a lot of green vegetation.
Really needs that vernalization, that period of cold.
Yes, to make the flowers bloom. There's a lot of misconceptions about ants on peonies. They will in no way affect the bloom of the peony plant. And it's real important that as soon as they start to come up, you begin staking them so you hold the bloom upright.
Greg, this is probably like asking you what's your favorite child, but do you have a favorite among all these peonies you've grown over the years and gotten to know?
No, I don't have one favorite. I like so many of them.
Yeah.
The corals are extremely popular right now. We like the corals because they come on so early.
Yes.
And that's one
And they're good for the South too.
Yeah, and that's one of the main attributes for them. I like the old varieties, the vintage type peonies. You know, the Duchess du Nez, the Festiva Maximas, the Carl Rosenfield, the older varieties that have stood the test of time, 150, 180 years old. I like the way they send out a beautiful fragrance. Dr. Alexander Fleming is one of my favorite for the fragrance. Myrtle Gentry is a great fragrance.
Yeah, Myrtle Gentry's fantastic.
About knocks you over, doesn't it?
Oh, I'm saying, yeah, she's beautiful.
I also like some of the singles. Some of the singles that you see here will bloom real early, so it gives you that early burst of color in your garden when other perennials aren't even starting to grow.
Do you get ants on your peony buds? I'll tell you why a little later. But up next, how to support the oftentimes large and heavy head of a peony blossom. When you begin to explore the fascinating and beautiful world of peonies, you begin to realize there's so many different variations, certainly in color, when they flower, early, mid, late, and so forth, and then of course the flower shape itself. So let's take a look at some of those flower forms, the form of the bloom. This one is the simplest. This is a single or Japanese type. You can see the stamens here in the center are golden, and this is a beautiful one introduced in 1931. This is called Shaler's Sunburst, and it does look like a beautiful sunburst. So simple and with a subtle fragrance to it. This beauty, on the other hand, is called Kickapoo, also introduced in 1931, but it's called an anemone type, just to make it confusing. So why don't we call a peony anemone? It's crazy, right? But what you have here is you still have that single row of petals like we saw on the single or the Japanese type, but look at how those stamens are exaggerated. You almost have this large ball-like shape, which really adds a lot of, I think, punch to this particular flower. Okay, so as you might guess, there are other types. So why don't I set Kickapoo down so we can enjoy the company of Shaler's Sunset, and we'll take a look at some others. All right, now let's talk about two other forms. As I mentioned, there's so many out here in this field. This is a beautiful one called Felix Krauss, and it's called the bomb form. And you see this single row of petals going around here, but then this round display of petals like this, very spherical. And you can see down in there just barely, hardly, you can see the stamens in there. They're completely hidden. Now that compared to this one, which is called nigricans, which was introduced in the early 1890s. This is a double, full-on double. There are also semi-doubles that aren't quite nearly as full, And you can see a little bit more of that stamen showing in there. But this one is very, very beautiful. You can see as it emerges, each petal with this gorgeous pink is outlined in a paler pink, which makes this very rare peony. All right, so let's talk about these shapes in review. Just look at all these splendid beauties. The singles, here's the one we talked about, Shaler's Sunburst, but here are a few others you might consider. This one's Clair de Lune, and this beauty here is a single called Okinawa. And then remember Kickapoo. This is an anemone type, single row of petals with this exaggerated sort of ball of anthers. And then next was Balm. You can see Felix Krauss here with the single row of petals around the edge, and then this round Balm, named after a dessert that was very popular in the 1930s. And then of course the doubles, and I think Sarah Bernhardt may be the most popular. We of course talked about the double Nigricans, which is so beautiful. And then somewhere in between we have the semi-doubles where you'll see a little bit more of that golden stamen. So there you go, a wide range of beauty and just the shape of these gorgeous flowers, the peony. Boy, you all are so gorgeous. It's easy to see why peonies are so popular. They're just so doggone luxurious and gorgeous. Just look at these flowers. Well, the flowers are large, which causes a problem. And you can see what that is right here with great old Sarah Bernhardt, probably the most popular peony of all time. She's so big that she, after a rain, will flop to the ground. You can see here along this row, these gorgeous flowers with their heads nodding to the ground rather than up like this. Well, what I tend to do is I cage them. There are lots of ways to go about that. It's best to put the cage out in the early spring when you begin to see the peonies emerge. If you're not on your game and you wait until the buds or the blooms are even this large, if you can do it before a heavy rain, that will keep them from having their little heads nodding to the ground. What I like to use is concrete reinforcing wire. I make these just by making a ring that I can put around the plants, and so all the blooms stay supported like this, which is really ideal because you want their shining faces looking up at you rather than looking at the ground. There are other methods of staking peonies. I've used a stake and string method, which works very well, and also other wire cages can be equally effective. But to get the most enjoyment out of them in your garden, you really want to think about staking them, particularly these that have such big, gorgeous heads. Like you, Sarah Bernhardt, you're such a beauty. Peony buds and ants, they often go hand in hand, but why it might not be such a bad thing coming up right after the break. Peonies are some of nature's most beautiful creations. So many gorgeous varieties to choose from. We love the blooms, but some people have a little anxiety when it comes to the buds because they often find ants dancing around on the tops. Why? Well, the peony exudes a lovely sweet nectar. Actually, the peony is edible. You can put the petals on a summer salad. The ants love the nectar. The ants don't bother the peony. In fact, some people believe that the ant, by removing some of that nectar, helps that bud to open. So there's no reason to get upset about the ants. If you're going to bring the cut peonies into your home, like I'm going to do here, you can just gently rinse the ants off. One little tip, when gathering peonies, if you want them to last for a long time, you want to harvest them in what they call the marshmallow stage, the soft marshmallow stage. This one's gone just a little past that. These will last a long time in a cooler, and then you can bring them out, recut the stems, put them in some warm water, and they'll open beautifully. If you want the peony to last more than 50 years, well, it's all in the care you give them when establishing the plant. How to plant peonies coming up next. Aren't these flowers just gorgeous? This is one of my favorites. This is a variety called Opal Hamilton. There's so many different varieties of peonies out there to choose from, but what you'll find is they bloom early, mid, and late season, ranging from, depending on where you live and the variety of peony, from say mid-April all the way to the first or maybe second week of June. Of course, here you can see they're in full bloom, and cutting them early in the morning like I'm doing is the best. But if you want to grow peonies, the fall is the time to plant. So let me give you a few tips on that. If you're planting a tuber, there's some things you need to know. This is a beautiful peony tuber. You can see the eyes popping out there, and that's the stem from last year's growth. What I want to do is I want to plant this with the soil about here. You want to make sure that you put it in good garden soil. It's nice and loamy, well drained, and in full sun. And you just pull the soil around like this. These will last for decades in your garden if planted correctly. When we come back, more peonies and a surefire tip to ensure lots of bloom the following year. I'll show you how just after the break. The beautiful coral peony, one of my favorite flowers. I don't know about you, but I love peonies of all types and colors. Just a few tips on what you do with them after they flower. So if you were here just a few weeks ago, you'd have seen gorgeous coral colored blooms that eventually faded to a soft creamy color. Now you can see that there are seed heads that have formed, and what I do is I just snap those off because I really don't want the energy of this plant going into making seed. I want it going back into the tuber to create big blooms for next year. The other thing I do is I leave my cages. You see the flower heads were so big and heavy, I use these wire cages to support them. I'll leave these wire cages around them just to keep the foliage upright. Again, the foliage is so important for building that strong tuber. The next thing I do is I take a little organic fertilizer and I sprinkle around the edges of them so that they're well fed. This puts them in good stead for lots of blooms next year. These plants have been in my garden for 15 years. It's one of my most beloved plants, and I love to see them flowering every spring. Having plants like these in your garden return year after year is a real joy. If you'd like to learn more about growing peonies and some varieties ideal for your part of the world, check out my website, pallensmith.com. Want to learn more? Visit pallensmith.com for delicious recipes, garden tips, blog posts, and more. Originally from China, it's easy to see how the peony over the past century and a half has become so beloved in American gardens. It's a plant that blooms at the time of Memorial Day, and it's a great way to honor our relatives and ancestors by planting them in cemeteries. I remember my great-grandmother Smith having them at her farm and also planting them in the family cemetery. A beautiful Memorial Day memory and tribute. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. We look forward to seeing you soon. Until next time, from the garden, I'm Alan Smith.